We're about 10 games into the NBA season already, which means there's obviously still so much basketball left to be played, but we've also seen enough by now to notice some substantial trends that are worth discussing. We have enough sample size to genuinely identify surprises and disappointments throughout the league, and in today's video, we'll be directing our attention to some of those pleasant surprises. Specifically, today we'll be discussing the 5 teams that thus far have legitimately been exceeding expectations and are sitting at the top of the standings, but weren't really in the group of teams that most predicted would be there in the offseason. So we'll be going through each one, deciding whether they are real contenders or pretenders regarding whether they can continue with this success or if they're bound to fall off. Before we start though, I want to thank Henson Shaving for sponsoring today's video. If you're tired of shaving with low quality razors that barely get the job done and need to be disposed of after just a handful of uses, then Henson is here to solve your problems with their AL13 razor. It's built with world-class quality based on precision, intended to take the guesswork out of the process, delivering a smooth and safe shave. It's also the most sustainable razor you will ever use, built plastic-free, meant to last you decades instead of just a small handful of uses like the others. Then best of all, the Henson AL13 will be the most cost-effective razor you will ever use, saving you hundreds in the long run when you make the switch. Ever since I made the switch, I've been having the best and easiest shaves of my life, so what are you waiting for? Head to the link in the description of this video to get yourself one today, and use promo code HOOPS at checkout to get 100 free blades with your purchase of a razor. Once again, thank you to Henson for sponsoring the video. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. The first team we'll be discussing that has had a surprisingly strong start to the year is the Dallas Mavericks, and my verdict on them is that they are in fact contenders. The Mavericks currently have the second best record in the entire NBA and are tied for first place in the Western Conference standings alongside the Denver Nuggets, with a record of 8-2. Last season, the Mavericks had more ups and downs than you can count, and their year ended in complete disappointment, flaming all the way out of the playoff race. After trading for Kyrie Irving before the deadline last year, that was the absolute worst case scenario they could have finished on, and obviously going into the offseason and then this season, people were hesitant to buy back into them as a group, but in my opinion their dreadful finish last season was way more of a fluke than their current strong start this year is. In the Luka Doncic era, the Mavericks have made the playoffs in 3 years in a row leading up to last year, and just 2 seasons ago they were in the conference finals, so let's not pretend that this isn't a group with experience. Now that Kyrie Irving is more settled in and acclimated, he's been a model of efficiency as a scorer as he's been throughout his career. Luka Doncic is back to absolute domination on the offensive end as both a scorer and creator, leading the league in scoring so far and dishing out over 8 assists a night, and the Mavericks as a whole have the second best offense in the entire league right now ranking-wise, trailing only behind the Indiana Pacers. Their defense is still admittedly a work in progress, but I do like the contributions that they're getting from Grant Williams and Derrick Jones Jr., plus rookie Derek Lively has shown flashes of legitimate rim protection inside that could blossom over time as the season progresses, so there's even room for optimism on that end. Their offense, led by Luka and Kyrie, is built to dominate, so I trust them to get back to where they want to be after one off year. The next team that has been surprising everyone so far is the Houston Rockets, who I unfortunately have as pretenders. The Rockets might be the most surprising team in the entire league so far, boasting a record of 6-3, good enough for 4th place in the Western Conference standings to this point, and they're currently on a 6-game winning streak after starting the year 0-3. They even just beat the defending champion Denver Nuggets in a statement game that proves they're here to be taken seriously, so it may seem as though I'm being harsh by still labeling them as pretenders, so allow me to clarify. There are a lot of really good teams in the Western Conference, and there's still so much basketball left to be played, so it's hard for me to fully buy into them as a playoff team right now, but I will absolutely say that they're a lot better than I believed they could be going into the season. Prior to the year, it still felt iffy regarding their ability to even make the play-in tournament because of how many teams were going to be fighting for it, but now the play-in tournament seems like it is definitely within in their sight. Bringing in coach Ime Udoka to be their head coach has done wonders, as they are now a very well-coached group. Newcomers Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet have already made their presence felt, shifting the culture there, and most importantly, they went from being the second worst defense in the NBA to currently being ranked 6th best on that end of the floor this year. They still need more production from Jalen Green, and Dylan Brooks' ridiculous efficiency shooting the ball so far this year probably isn't sustainable, so there are some areas that will probably return back to the mean on. So while I wouldn't bank on them staying in the top 4 of the West in the long run, there is definitely a lot of positives to be taken from their hot start. The next team off to a surprisingly blistering hot start is the Philadelphia 76ers, who fall into the contender column. This offseason, there was literally nothing but negativity directed towards the Sixers, and pretty much every mainstream media outlet, analyst, and podcast host talked about their impending falloff because of James Harden forcing his way out of town. As it turns out, that may have been exactly what they needed in order to unlock a better version of themselves. One move that got very underrated at the time was the firing of Doc Rivers as head coach, and then the hiring of Nick Nurse to replace him, because they, like the Rockets, went from being one of the least well-coached teams in the NBA to one of the most well-coached teams in the league, which has gone a long way for the development of someone like Tyrese Maxey. With James Harden gone, the Sixers offense looks like a brand new product, filled with ball movement, passing, cuts, movement without the ball, screens, and diverse action that simply was not there under the guidance of Doc Rivers or with James Harden running the show. Maxey now looks like a legitimate all-star in the making. Joel Embiid is once again amongst the league leaders in scoring while also anchoring a fringe top 5 defense, and players like Nicholas Batum and Robert Covington, who were included in the James Harden trade, have come in and proven they can still be rock-solid glue guys in a rotation. The Sixers have the best record in the entire NBA right now, with their only loss coming on opening night against the Bucks in a 1-point loss, and in their win streak they've beaten the Boston Celtics as a very good win. It's still way too early to say that they're locked into championship contender tier, but in terms of being one of the best teams in the East, they can definitely stake that claim after many expected them to fall down into the play-in tournament range without James Harden. The next team off to a flying start that we'll be discussing today is the Indiana Pacers, who also unfortunately fall into the pretenders column. The Pacers have the 3rd best record in the Eastern Conference right now, and they're a group that knows how to tire out their opponents if they don't come in ready to run. Their success is built upon their fast-paced offense that is currently the number 1 ranked offense in the entire league, because they know how to not only get a lot of shots up, but they do so while making sure that they're high-quality looks. On top of having the top-ranked offense, they're also doing so while running the 3rd fastest pace in the league, and Tyrese Halliburton is the one leading the way. Halliburton's putting up about 24 points and a league-leading 12 assists per game, shooting the ball incredibly efficiently as he usually does, and around him there are 6 other Pacers players scoring in double figures per game, so everybody is getting involved. The reason why I have them as pretenders, though, is that they're really not a good defensive team at all, currently ranked in the bottom 5 of the league on that end, and I'm not sure if I trust their weapons enough to remain as the top-ranked offense all year long, which is what they would need to be to sustain this level of success. I do, like the Rockets, think it's more realistic to expect them to have an appearance in the play-in tournament at the end for them, which would still be very good progress for their rebuild, but not good enough to be a top 5 team in the East in the long run yet. And finally, the last surprisingly good team we'll be discussing today is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who do get the contender label. The Timberwolves are currently just a half game back of the Mavericks and the Nuggets for first place in the standings, with a record of 7-2, and after a year to forget last season, they look rejuvenated and ready for a leap. When the Timberwolves brought in Rudy Gobert 2 years ago, they did so with the intention of shoring up their defense. Last year, the growing pains were as painful as they get, but with a year under their belts playing together, they are finally seeing the returns that they were hoping for, as the Timberwolves are actually the league's number 1 ranked defense so far, and Gobert has gotten himself firmly back into the Defensive Player of the Year race after winning the award 3 times in Utah. Gobert and Jaden McDaniels are a truly elite defensive frontcourt. Naz Reid comes in off the bench and holds things down on that end as well, and simultaneously, we're also seeing Anthony Edwards take yet another leap offensively, so they have the potential superstar closer to lead them to wins down the stretch of games after locking things down on defense all game. To add even more reason to be optimistic about them, Karl Anthony Towns hasn't even been that good this year yet, and they're still playing great basketball, so if he gets a positive regression shooting the ball closer to how well he has historically, then this could get even better. He's scoring just 19 points per game, shooting 34% from 3 this year, despite being a career 23-point scorer that makes 40% of his threes, so a bit of positive regression seems inevitable for one of the league's best big man shooters. They've got wins over the Warriors, Celtics, and Nuggets already this year too, so you can't even say that they've been beating up on bad teams early on. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below how you think these surprising teams will fare for the rest of the year. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.